Alright, so this is going to be a quick video on how to set up VMware and have it work with Ninja Ripper in case you have a game that has like an anti-cheat or something. So I will put a link to a Google Drive that will have these like folders, these exes, these tools in them, so you can use them for your own convenience, because I'm going to be making this tutorial based off of this pin, which is in the Ninja Ripper Discord. But I mean, basically, if you follow this, you'll get to the end of this video. The person who wrote this, English may not be their first language, so it's a little bit tricky to read, but it's not too bad. All right. So first thing it tells you is that you need version 17.52 of VM Workstation Player. It is free, but this post is old because you can't find Workstation Player anymore. If you try to look it up, let's say like on Google, you're gonna find stuff on, I don't even think this is gonna, you won't be able to find the player that you need, I think. Well, either way, I'm going to send you the link to the version 17.52 that you need, which I have right here. So I already extracted the zip file that it came in. You would go ahead and install like regular, and when you open it up, you will have something like this where it says welcome to VM Workstation 17 Player. You could only create one machine at a time. I have mine created and I'm not going to delete it because I don't want to forget the settings, so I'm just going to show you the settings that you can choose. Because it's player and it's not pro, there's not a lot of settings that you can change. But if I go to edit virtual machine settings, I can see what I have it set up as. So one thing you're going to need is that you're going to need either Windows 7 or Windows 10. I'm going to be ripping stuff out of PUBG. So I'm going to be using Windows 10 since that's still kind of like a current game. It still gets updated. So because I'm using Windows 10, you would go to, you could just go online and you can just look up Windows 10 ISO. And then the first thing that should come up is the Microsoft page to download the ISO file for this. You don't have to buy a license because you're not really going to be doing any actual Windows work in the virtual machine. You're just going to be opening up Steam and the game that you want to use. So you would just go ahead and hit download now, and then you would have a ISO file created, which I have here. I'm not going to, you see how big it is? I'm not going to send you guys an ISO file. You guys can download that yourself. But once you have that downloaded, when you're setting up the virtual machine, it's going to ask you for the working directory for the ISO. It's one of these. Anyway, it's one of the setups that you're going to need. So you just select the ISO file wherever it is, and then you want to, I don't think you get to choose the memory or the processor until you're done setting it up, but one thing it will ask you is the size for your disk file. The default size, I believe, is 60 gigabytes. That's like just enough to get away with like the Windows files, which take up, I don't know, I'm guessing like a quarter of that. So if you have a game that's kind of big, like PUBG is about 40 gigs, you won't have enough space to download the game. So make sure you give yourself enough space, and obviously have enough space on your actual computer, which is where it shows system free. So I set my hard disk drive to 150 just to give me enough space to download the game onto the virtual machine. It will give you a choice to either like defragment the disk to have it in different parts in case you want to move the virtual machine anywhere else. I don't think you have to do that. You can decide to just keep it as one single file. That kind of also saves space, I believe. But once you finish setting up, you will go back to this page. So then now you definitely want to go into edit virtual machine settings, and you're going to change some stuff. For memory, you can go ahead and actually look up what your computer's memory and all that stuff is. I don't think it will show me here. Oh, yes it will. All right, so I can see that my computer has 64 gigs of memory of RAM, and which is the maximum recommended memory. I just went ahead and I moved it up. It was at 2 gigabytes. I moved it up to 32. I don't know if this will actually like change anything in terms of how the game runs, but don't go all the way up to the maximum. I don't think you need to, but just give yourself enough space, enough room to run the game comfortably, especially if you're trying to get like an actual cutscene or moving parts of whatever game you're opening up. So that's memory. Next is processors. Because this is Player, which is like the free non-commercial version of VMware, you can't change the number of like processors that you have. If I go to CPU, I see that I have, or the sockets, I have one socket, which means I have, I think, one CPU. I'm not sure entirely. And then 6 cores. I can't change the number of cores I have, so make sure it like matches up with kind of what your computer has, because I messed around with this a lot. I wasn't able to open up the game for a while, and I was trying to figure out what the reason was, and it was because I was giving the processor cores, I only had 2 when I was setting up the virtual machine. So I realized that if I set it up to the amount of cores that my computer actually has, it's able to run well enough. There's some virtualization settings here. They don't work on the VM player or Workstation 17 player. They only work on Pro. I don't even know why this is an option here, because it won't work. Also, I have Windows 11 Home. I think if you have Pro, it might work. But the game runs fine without it. I've been able to get the game open and working without it, so you don't have to worry about that. There's an option to change, or maybe not here. No, I don't think so. That's the thing on Pro. You can change if you want it to be a SATA or a NMVE. I don't know, some other options for how this ISO file is read. But for Player, you can't change that. You don't have to change any other settings. Again, we're just ripping. I guess if you're using this virtual machine for other stuff, you might want to change, network adapter settings or, shared folders. I never had a reason to do that, so I don't have to. So those are all the settings that you want to set up. Just make sure that you change your memory, change the processors, and give yourself enough space on your hard disk. So now, if you go back to this, it's gonna also tell you to make sure that you have this DirectX 9.0. This is for like older games. You don't need it if you're running like a newer game that uses DirectX 11 or 12. But if you're gonna try to open up an old game, then you definitely want to download this. I think I have it in my downloads folder in this. Do I? Let's see. I don't think I do. But I will put a link to the Ninja Ripper Discord in case you guys want to go ahead and find this link. But I don't necessarily need it. So after that, you want to go ahead and set up your virtual machine before you open up Ninja Ripper. So let's go ahead and open up the virtual machine. You're gonna get this pop-up that's gonna tell you that some side channel mitigations are enabled. You can't unenable it or disable it on Workstation Player. You could only do it on Pro. So you could click Do Not Show This Hint again if you're using Player, because you can't do anything about it anyway. Another thing that I won't show because I'm not going to set up the virtual machine is that you're going to have to go through some Windows setup, the Windows 10 setup, which does take a while. Another thing is that you might see, let's see if I can find the, alright. So you might see when you're setting up VMware for the first time, you might see like this EFI network timeout show up. So the workaround is right here, that you're just gonna have to kind of stop and relaunch until it actually starts working. But it's that as soon as like VMware pops up, make sure that you click into the virtual machine. You're gonna see that your mouse disappears, and then as soon as those what do you call it? It's gonna tell you right here that as soon as it tells you to like touch any key, make sure that you touch any key. So like spacebar, for example. If you do end up with the EFI timeout error, then you're gonna have to turn it off and turn it back on again. So just remember that if that does happen, you're just gonna have to turn it off and turn it back on again, or else you might get an error where then you have like a system thread exception not handled. If you go through, a lot of these options are for like pro, changing your number of processors, because apparently this also happens if you try to open it up with 2 processors instead of 1. But this shouldn't really be a problem, but this could happen if you don't go through that EFI timeout error. So just something to remember. But once you have set up all of VMware, let me just log in really quick. Once you set up Windows, you're gonna go ahead and make sure that you can install the game. So I'm just gonna open this up. I don't know if you're downloading a game from Steam, make sure that you are able to log in and download Steam. Another thing is that you're going to need a couple of tools in here. I don't believe Workstation Player lets you download it like right from here. Pro does let you download the VMware tools. Oh. From here, let's see, manage. Oh yeah, you might, if you go to manage and you go into install VMware tools, you can download the VMware tools from here, which is what it's telling you to do right here. Oh. Install inside the guest machine VMware tools. You can do it like that, but if for some reason, I'm not sure, I can't remember if Player does allow you to do it that way. If it doesn't, make sure that you have like a Google Drive that you can get to, and then go ahead and I will put this in the link, but you would go ahead and put the, where is it? Do I have it here? I will put a link to the VMware tools that you will just have to download manually, install manually. Let's see. I think I have it here. Yeah, it's going to be a exe file. Make sure it's the 64-bit version. But that would be something you need to download inside of the VMware machine. Once you have that up, if you need that DirectX 9 for old games, go ahead and download that. And make sure that's downloaded inside of the guest machine, like it tells you here. Let's see. So after you do that, you can go ahead and make sure that you download your game. I have my game downloaded already. If I open up Steam, go into my library, I have the game right here. I already have it downloaded. Once you have that all set up, you can go ahead and shut down your player. So go ahead and go up to power, or you can shut it down like normal from down here. It's gonna ask for an update. I don't want to update. I'm just gonna shut down. Once that's shut down, you want to go ahead and set up Ninja Ripper. If you like have a Patreon account and you downloaded that, make sure that you have kind of a newer version of Ninja Ripper installed. I tried doing this with a Ninja Ripper 2.0 0.5 beta version of it, since that one is free, but it didn't work for me. So I had to download the, as of August 29th, the latest version is 2.9. So I just had to download that from the Patreon after I, became a patron. So I can't send you this because you need, that one key or code that's linked to your account. But make sure that you have the latest or recently latest setup of Ninja Ripper. When you extract that, you're going to have obviously the setup. You can go ahead and go through the setup and set that up. And then you're also going to, if we go into the Discord, it will, if we go down to Blender, I believe, and in the pins in here, the fifth pin will tell you where the Blender import is actually stored. I thought it was going to be like right in the zip file, but for some reason it's not. It gets installed in your program files. As long as you didn't change anything when you were setting up the exe, it should be where this is telling you that it is. So I just went ahead and I moved that into my Ninja Ripper folder just for ease of use, just so I can find it easier. And we can go ahead and set that up really quick by opening up Blender. If you're using like a new version of Ninja Ripper, I was told that the Blender add-on will work with any new version of Blender. I am used to working in 3.6, so that's what I use. But I heard that it's supposed to work in Blender 4. Obviously, you should know how to install add-ons into Blender, but if you don't, obviously you go to install. Where is it? Into my Ninja Ripper tools, and obviously you don't extract the zip file when it's a Blender add-on. You would just go ahead and install that. You're gonna see it under your import as world space and local space. Okay. So once you do that, once you set up Ninja Ripper, it should be an icon as long as you didn't change anything while you were setting it up on your desktop. You want to go ahead and right click and run as administrator, which is something it tells you to do in the instructions anyway, I believe. So we're going to wait for that to open up. So once it opens up, make sure obviously administrator is in quotation or in parentheses. You need to find the executable, not for the game, obviously, because that's running in VMPlayer, but you need to find the executable for the VMPlayer itself. So if we go to where we have the VMPlayer, we can go ahead and right click and open file location. I didn't change anything, so it's going to be default like it tells you in here. But for some reason, if you changed it, you can just find the file location like that, and you would go ahead and just copy the file path and place it in here, which will then give you the working directory. Or you would choose the exe here, and then the working directory would be pasted there. All right, before we launch, we need to go into settings and change a couple of things. It will tell you here exactly what to change, so you just need to follow this. But we're going to be using force rip. I've accidentally used frame rip and it actually works, but I don't know if that's the same for all games. So just make sure that when you're pressing keys, you're pressing your force rip key, which you can change to anything. I decided on numpad 0 simply because it will not be used by the game. I don't have any of these extra keys, but if you want to make sure that you don't click anything inside of the game, you can go ahead and set that up. The default duration, I believe, is 20 seconds for this. If you're getting a model that's just static and it's not moving, I would set that low. 7 seems to be a good space for me to make sure it captures the entirety of the model that I want to rip. But obviously, if you're getting something that's moving, I think the max duration is 600 seconds, or that's the default, I believe. Max file count, the default is 1,000. I decreased that to 500. And then max frames count, in case you want to make sure you don't go above a certain amount of frames. But for that, I would definitely leave at default, which is 0. For your output settings, you can click Save World Meshes. I think this is all just how I came set up, so I don't think I changed anything. DDS files, I would suggest keep leaving it as DDS, simply because PNG and JPEG don't always save all the information in a texture, but DDS will. And then if you have like any emissive textures, which is what HDR is, you would click that on as well. It tells you right here that you want to make sure that you change your DXGI hook method from wrapper to patch, so make sure you do that. And then also make sure that you change the DLL injection method to APC. I didn't have to change anything else. Thankfully, it worked for me. If for some reason something doesn't work, obviously always ask in the server. I'm not a expert on this. I just was able to figure out how to use this. All right, so once we have these settings set up, hit OK, and now we can go ahead and launch the game. What it will do is that it's going to obviously launch the VMWare exe. So we're going to wait for that to open up, and then we can go ahead and go into our virtual machine like regular. Something else, I guess, if you went into settings, something that you should do before you run it is make sure that you choose a good output directory, something that you can find. It's going to default into like a roaming folder. But again, if you didn't change it, that's fine. You could always just hit open directory and it will take you to where it's going to be. So when the game is, or when the VM player is open, it's going to create these 4 or these 3 files, which eventually you can just delete once you're done with Ninja Ripper and you close it out. You can't delete it now, and I wouldn't suggest doing that because it's obviously loading right now. One thing that will not pop up if you did something wrong, if you messed up a setting, or you have like a very old version of Ninja Ripper, this MKS sandbox file or this folder will not pop up. So you know you did it right, and you know you will be able to rip something if this folder does show up in your rip directory. If we click in it, it doesn't have anything right now. It just has a very small txt file. But eventually, when we do hit our rip keys, it will have a rip folder, which will have your textures and your mesh. So let's just wait for this to open up then. Alright, and once you log in, something that I think is helpful to make sure that you set up your VM player and it's working correctly is to have Task Manager open, which I pinned to my bar, and just go to Performance. That way you can see your CPU use, because for me to actually get this to work, I had to make sure that my processors were working enough. And you can actually see that even though I set up 6 cores on this, because it's a virtual machine, it looks like it halved it. I don't know what would happen if I put in 12, but I've been able to get the game open with just 3, so that's fine. You can see it's taken up all my CPU use just by having this open. That's great. But I'm going to go ahead and try to open up Steam, and then from here we're going to go ahead and open up the game. Alright, I'm going to hit play. It's going to take a little bit to open up. It's not as fast as a regular computer. Alright, let's say I want to go ahead and extract this. Alright, so what I would do, and it tells you here in the instructions, that make sure that you hit Control A to kind of pop out of the Windows 10 or the virtual machine. and then you go ahead and hit the button that you set up for forced rip, which is for me numpad 0. So let's go ahead and do that. When I do it, this shouldn't change into red. It would only do that if I hit my print screen button. But once it does, we should see a rip _0 folder pop up in our rip directory. So obviously I'm clicked into the game, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Control A. Now I'm popped out, so you see that my my mouse changed, and I'm going to hit numpad 0. If we had music on, we would kind of hear it like stutter, which tells me that it's working, but we have the rip 0 folder here, and again, it's only going to rip for 7 seconds because that's what I set up. So it should be done. If we change this into large icons and sort by type, I can go ahead and scroll down. I could wait for this to load really quick, and I can see that it ripped the character, and it also ripped some icons that are just inside of the frame. As you can see the shirt right here, so it worked. And sometimes it gives you a preview of like what it took a screenshot of. I don't know if it did for this one. No, I didn't for this one, but that's fine. Anyway, I ripped the game, and these NR files are our mesh files. So once you finish ripping whatever you need to rip, go ahead and just shut this down like normal. Anyway, once that's shut down, go ahead and close Ninja Ripper. That way you can go into here and change the sandbox file name or folder name to whatever you want. Oh, it's gonna give me a second. I guess this needs to turn off. Yep, alright, cool, I can name it now. Okay, so once I have that, we can go ahead and open up Blender. I still have it open. Just gonna close this, and we can go ahead and import. There's gonna be 2 types of imports like we saw before. Either world space or local space. I'll show you what happens if you choose world space. So we can go ahead and find the folder, Karina, rip 0. Just go ahead and select the first one. If you ripped a bunch of files, it's going to be really big. And then just hit Shift to select all of them. If you're using world space for something, let's say like you want like an actual scene, like for rendering, make sure you hit Get Text Chords from local space. But if you're not, if you want like a static mesh, obviously you're not going to use world space, because I'm going to show you how it looks. It's going to be all fucked up. It's going to take a while because there's, I think it showed like 150 meshes. But if I click out, it's basically like what the entire game has, right? Has a lot in it. And if I like start deleting stuff like this, it's just these big boxes that the menu had. You see that she's like upside down. She's also kind of like squished, like she doesn't have the right proportions. So this obviously isn't what I want. So let's go ahead and hit A to delete everything. And when you import something that's like big and it's taking up a lot of space, sometimes your Blender viewport might start getting like these wonky lines. To get rid of that, you can just open up a new layout by going to Add Workspace, General, and Layout. And that will just fix the problem, and you can delete the old one. And then we can go ahead and move this to the front. So instead, we want it to import as local space, T-pose. So this is like the default position of the model, which if you want to use this model in like a different game, import it over. If you want to, create a 3D print of it, you probably want it in this T-pose. So I'm going to go ahead and open it like that. Same thing, select all the meshes. You can go ahead and import. It's going to take a while again, and the viewport is going to break again because there's these big blocks here. If I go into wireframe mode, I can just delete these really quick. And delete these. And delete these. Also, I didn't point it out, but when you're importing as local space, instead of using that text codes from world space or like from local space like you would have if you used the world space import, you don't want to make sure you click that. You want to make sure that's unticked if you're going to be using the tpose import method. Okay, when it imports, if you're going to solid view mode, she is backwards based off of our general blender thing. So we can go ahead and select everything and just rotate her on the z-axis. Then we rotate her the rest of the way, 180. And if you're going to a material preview, we see that our textures are a little bit messed up, and that's because Ninja Ripper imports things with 6 UV maps, but our correct one is actually our 3rd UV map. So you would have to go ahead and delete the 3rd UV map for everything, but I'm not going to do that yet because we lasted only 7 seconds on a model that really wasn't moving much. We have duplicates, which is why if you choose 20, you're going to have like 1,000 meshes and a bunch of duplicates. So I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and I would just go through and delete duplicates. Yep, we need those. Okay. So now you got rid of all your duplicate meshes, you can go ahead and delete all your UV maps, so you only keep 3, and then you would go ahead and apply textures like normal. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You should know how to do that yourself. And that's how you use Ninja Ripper to rip games using a virtual machine.